For more, let's bring in Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson. He sits on the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Sunday Briefing.
Morning, Jackie. Hope you're doing well.
You as well, sir. So we're tracking these war developments. Obviously, the president, as you know, never took troops on the ground off the table. Are we nearing that point now with oil prices putting pressure on the Strait of Hormuz? The Wall Street Journal writes this: the U.S. holding off on sending warships to the narrow strait, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, with Navy officers saying Iranian drones and anti-ship missiles could turn the area into a kill box for American sailors. One option to clear the way for escorts would be a more intense use of air power to hunt and destroy Iranian missiles and drones before they could be fired at ships in the strait. Another would be to use ground troops to seize the territory around the waterway. What do you think about boots on the ground? Is that something you would support?
Well, the world is seeing exactly what a menace Iran is, and I, for one, hope that we end that menace for good. It's crucial to open up the Strait of Hormuz. It sounds like Iran may be somewhat backing down. I read an article today that they're going to let other ships other than Israeli or U.S. ships through there. They realize that they will not have support of the world if they keep the strait closed. So we need to keep that open. I appreciate the fact that President Trump is calling on other nations to provide naval ships to keep that strait open. I'm not sure where it goes. I, for one, would be very reluctant to put boots on the ground because I think that's where Iran has a real strategic advantage. They've got a couple 100,000 people in the IRGC, 600,000 in the Basij, that contingent. So, we've done an awful lot of good in terms of degrading their military capability, reducing their missiles, their drones, knocking out their nuclear site. But I want to see the Iranian regime end because it is a menace. They've been at war with us for 47 years. It's time to end that.
Yeah, and you mentioned, obviously, the president calling other nations to send their warships to the strait. Hopefully there'll be a response to that. We haven't seen one yet. But what is the funding outlook for this? Do you expect Congress to have to pass some sort of a supplemental?
I'm sure Congress will. From my standpoint, I'd like to see it offset. We spent $4.4 trillion prior to the pandemic. Now we're spending $7.4 trillion. You got to get our priorities right. Funding our military, defending this nation is the top priority of government. There's hundreds of billions of dollars of money we shouldn't be spending that we should offset that with. Again, will I succeed? Probably not, but we have to support our troops.
Mm-hmm. DHS shutdown is in the first days of its second month. It's not just TSA that we've heard a lot about, but also CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, amid this heightened threat environment, obviously when adversaries like China, Russia, even Iran could exploit those gaps. Democrats have refused to fund DHS, citing these issues with ICE. But they also say that the obstruction is happening on both sides. Listen here.
I think Americans are asking, what is wrong with you? Why not get serious, Republicans, and solve this problem, which is in your power? You have the majority. I don't think Americans are going to have a lot of stomach for this kind of obstructionism.
So Senator Jeanne Shaheen told Politico that oftentimes the product of these talks goes back to the White House, and she says that Stephen Miller rejects the proposals. Senator Schatz suggested that maybe Susie Wiles would be a better person to lead negotiations and move the needle. Do you think that the White House needs to play a more active role in breaking this stalemate?
Well, it's unconscionable what Democrats are doing, where we obviously have a heightened threat level here because of what's happening in Iran. The fact that they let in probably somewhere around 10 million people flood this country illegally. We have no idea who these people are. Are there Iranian sleeper cells? Now, it was a strategic blunder, from my standpoint, for Republicans not to insist that we fund DHS when we were funding other Democrat priorities. Now Democrats want to do the same thing. They want to fund their priorities within the DHS budget and not fund CBP and ICE, the agencies we need to keep our border secure. So again, I don't think we should cave from them. What we're hearing is Democrats aren't even sitting down negotiating. Not with the White House, not with Senate leadership, not with the chairman of our DHS subcommittee appropriations committee. So again, they get away with it because the legacy media does not hold them accountable, and they're very smug when it comes to the fact that they're not held accountable.
while DHS is left unfunded, there have been a number of terror attacks on American soil. There were, 4 in the last month that potentially are linked to Iran. You had Old Dominion, nexus to terrorism, according to the FBI, the Michigan synagogue attack, the makeshift bombs in New York. You had Austin. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act expires next month. As you know, it allows U.S. intelligence agencies to collect data on suspected terrorists abroad. Congress expanded these authorities after 9/11 precisely because a warrant could slow down the process in a counterterrorism case. I know you've expressed concern about warrants with FISA before, but given this heightened terror threat, would you support a clean reauthorization of Section 702?
I would like to see some controls instituted when we see how the Biden administration really abused FISA. But Kash Patel and John Radcliffe came into Senate lunch this week and made a pretty convincing case. They need FISA. They need it now. They can't afford, and America would be really put at risk if they don't have those authorities. So again, we're kind of running out of time. I'd rather not extend it for 18 months, which would put it right during the appropriation process where you could slip into one of these bills. We need to have this debate. We need to be thoughtful in terms of kind of controls we do place on this to protect American citizens' constitutional rights without harming our national security.
What kinds of reforms are you talking about? Are you talking about a warrant requirement? Because the other side of that debate is that the people who cite Carter Page, obviously that's a different statute of FISA, it's Title I, and this database, Section 702, intelligence agencies say that material has been collected lawfully, and imposing a warrant requirement to basically look at a database that's already been put together when there's a threat to investigate would be costly. Is that part of this debate right now, or are you talking about other reforms?
It's not so much the cost, it's the time. And I don't know that you can design a system that would be streamlined enough that we really need. Obviously, if you have responsible leadership in charge of this process, I don't have a problem with it. The problem is during the Biden administration, we saw them weaponize these agencies. So again, we need to look at this. We need to deal with this very thoughtfully. Quite honestly, I don't think we have the time before this thing expires. So we'll probably just have to extend it. The president is pushing for that. Everybody in his security, in those roles are pushing for it. So my guess it'll pass.
And finally, because we are almost out of time, sir, I just want to get your thoughts on the FCC chairman. He has been heavily criticizing broadcast news organizations for their war coverage, threatening not to renew their broadcast licenses, though. And the critics jumped on a post that he made a few years ago, sort of countering himself and saying the FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of public interest. Obviously, there is a lot of criticism on the very news reporting that the administration is unhappy with. But do you think it's the role of the government to police that kind of coverage, from where they sit?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of the First Amendment. I do not like the heavy hand of government, no matter who's wielding it. So, no, I would rather the federal government stay out of the private sector as much as possible. And really, the federal government's role is to protect our freedoms, protect our constitutional rights.
Thank you so much, Senator Johnson. It's been great talking to you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, sir.
Have a good morning.
You too.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.